Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for obviously attending. We appreciate the time, and great to see you all. My name is Brian Clint, and I am with Salesforce. I am very fortunate. I get to work with one of our amazing customers, 3M. It's a joint customer for Salesforce and AWS. I'm joined here with Jason Amadon. I'll let Jason introduce himself in just a minute, but he is their director of customer operations at 3M. And we have the pleasure to work with Jason on a daily basis for both Salesforce and AWS. And we're here today to kind of talk about how 3M is transforming their customer experience with Salesforce and AWS. And we're going to focus on Service Cloud Voice. But we'll kind of go through the story of how we got here and kind of the opportunity ahead for Salesforce, AWS, and 3M together. Go to the. Oh, I'll let you advance.
Perfect.
Perfect. Then, perfect. Obviously, forward-looking statement. A lot of what we'll be sharing is confidential, so just keep it within the event itself. But had to get through that. We can go to the next. And so again, Brian, Jason, been working with 3M for the last 5 years, and 3M is a strategic customer for both Amazon and Salesforce. From a Salesforce standpoint, they're one of our largest manufacturing customers globally. They've actually deployed 24 businesses on one single org for Salesforce. So they're one of our largest single org customers. We've had the pleasure to be partners with 3M for the last 15 years. We've really grown our relationship with them over the last 6 years. And they today, as I mentioned, are one of our largest single org customers. And the amazing thing is we just migrated that onto Hyperforce, which is our new partnership with AWS. So 3M, from a scale standpoint, is almost as large as Salesforce. And we just migrated that seamlessly onto Hyperforce, so a huge performance benefit for 3M, and it just shows the continuation of the partnership with AWS and Salesforce. But again, a phenomenal customer, and we'll kind of speak throughout the session today on how 3M has been using both AWS and Salesforce and the partnership, and even some of our announcements I'm sure you saw in the marketplace today. With a deeper integration of Service Cloud Voice with AWS. I think we're doing a lot around Data Cloud. If you haven't heard of Data Cloud, it is phenomenal. It's built on AWS as well. From a data migration standpoint, they're using MuleSoft today on top of AWS at 3M. As I mentioned, Service Cloud Voice that we'll be speaking to with our partner NeuroFlash. And actually the whole infrastructure of 3M and Salesforce rides on top of AWS. So big partner of ours, huge partner and customer of AWS as well. They're doing some amazing things with Bedrock that now sits on top of Salesforce with AWS as well. So just really neat, kind of very innovative, kind of forward-looking things that we're doing together as partners. And it really started a couple years ago when 3M wanted to look at reimagining their experience for their customers. Today, their customer experience sits on top of Service Cloud, which is our kind of main platform at 3M from a service delivery standpoint. They have about 3,000 service agents globally on Service Cloud, and they're really transforming how they engage with their customers through Salesforce and AWS and other strategic partners. But a really neat journey. We call it the Connected Clouds journey. And so we're honored to be here to tell the story.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, and thank you for your time. I know it's look. I think if you found your way back here, you're interested in the content or at least the topic, and so I appreciate it. So, going to try to be respectful, definitely of your time. Talk for a little bit, maybe show 6-8 slides, and tell a little bit of a story about what we did this year. And then open up to maybe talk about what's coming next. But really, I'd like to answer your questions, right? So I've got some technical folks, representation partner and NeuroFlash with us that'll come up and assist. So if you ask really hard questions, I'll punt. So as long as you guys are in the right room, we'll talk about what we did and how we got here. So maybe just a little bit about 3M for those that aren't aware. You can see this on both. Maybe I'll come to the middle a little bit. So it starts with purpose. I've had the pleasure of being with 3M for quite a while, over 20 years now. It really is about unlocking, how to leverage science and people and ideas and creating uncommon connections. And if you think about the questions we ask ourselves a lot, how do we leverage science to advance healthcare? How do we empower consumers? How do we transform the future? How do we shape the future of transportation and of manufacturing? And how do we improve lives? Good chance that most of the time, you're within 10 feet of a 3M product, whether it be from the adhesives that are in your cell phone right now that allow it to be stronger and lighter weight, brighter. There could be enhancement light films in there as well that are refracting light. Can be, what's on the walls. Can be our far barrier products that are inside the walls. Can be on windows. Solar panels and light, again, refracting technology to either keep heat out, generally speaking, or to manufacture heat a different way. Could be filters in the ventilators. There's a good chance that we're within a bunch of 3M products right now, and so you may not know about it. And we go to market through these 4 business groups. So you can see there, each of these business groups is a kind of a conglomerate of several divisions inside of it. So the safety and industrial, there's a bunch of adhesives, as I mentioned, abrasives, personal safety products are all a part of that portfolio. Transportation electronics, from traffic safety signs to display materials to automotive division, where the vehicles are going from car to cell phone. So it's a kind of a combination of two different parts of 3M technology. Healthcare, where from dental to orthodontia to our medical division to a health information business is a big portfolio. And then, consumer, a lot of the brands you may know of or you may not know are even 3M. It's holiday season pretty soon here, so Command is a big brand of 3M's. Scotch and Scotch Brite. Post-it, you're probably familiar with, is a legacy 3M brand, as well as Meguiar's if you're a car enthusiast. And I was out here at the SEMA show a few years ago. And kind of the way the model works in the portfolio is, if you think about you've got big investments in R&D. You can see here kind of our periodic table of elements. There's central R&D folks that work on establishing platforms that then are given to the divisions, right? So the divisions take these and they modify them for their market, and we go to market as I showed before. But there's quite a bit of investment in the center. And again, we're a manufacturer that makes stuff, so across 200-ish locations globally. So there's a heavy manufacturing and plant and distribution center, as well as technology investment. This just kind of paints a picture of how this works. So you take, in this example, a nonwovens. You can see where it started. It was intended for a specific purpose within the safety industrial business. Well, that same technology then, the core components in that central R&D lab, they work together with the division folks to try to tweak it for what's needed in the market. And you can see how it might come to market in transportation versus healthcare versus consumer. So this model works. It's gone over for over 100 years now. The purpose of what we want to talk to you about today. So that if that's where over my career, I guess, and I, by the way, admittedly, I'm more the business guy here. So as this conversation gets more technical, my opinion will only go so far. It'll become opinion, not fact, right? So standing in line is asking for funds in the company. You can see where it goes, right? It can be tough to invest, especially in the last decade or so, to get investment for things like we want to talk about today. But in the past few years, the company's really started to embrace, I think we were forced to embrace, if I'm being honest, the digitization of the company. So this is, kind of the 4 pillars of the company's strategy that we speak about externally as it relates to digitizing the company. And, the customer service transformation journey really addresses 3 out of 4. Both the enterprise, the operations, the customer, and it may at some point touch into products. So we started talking to customers, and you didn't have to look too far to see a little bit about the experience, and not everywhere, but in pockets that they were feeling. And so really, it was a bit of a cry to us to invest in the service journey. Everything has to be a phone call. And again, I'm telling the story from about a year ago now. Customers are just saying, why does it always have to be a phone call? You know what I'm going to call you about. Push me the information, please. How come if I call you and I have to get switched around, the next guy doesn't know what the last lady was talking to me about? So just, an inconsistent experience with what people are used to now in their day-to-day. So, we decided to take a move. One of the first, there's a bunch of things we plan to do. The first move was Service Cloud Voice, powered by AWS. So I'll let my esteemed colleague here talk about it.
Well, thank you so much. And my name's Patrick Barries. I happen to be the head of product and innovation at the SI Partner, who helped make all of this possible, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But personally, I actually spent over a decade at Salesforce and, in fact, created the Service Cloud Voice product when I was there. And the Service Cloud Voice product brings together the great technology stacks of both AWS and Salesforce for the benefit of the customer, bringing that telephony experience natively into Salesforce in a digital way to make really the dial tone be the next digital channel. And so that was kind of part of the foundation of the story here, and we'll let Jason talk more about that story in a minute. But NeuroFlash is the company that helped make this real at 3M. Obviously, the implementation, as you saw at 3M, the business is varied. It's global. It has multiple different business lines, business units, and we were able to help them create, this kind of path toward digitization and path toward the future that gives them the foundation for not just what they need today, but where they want to go next. And in fact, the results that they're seeing, which Jason will start to talk about in a little bit, really help fuel that next stage of growth. Those benefits immediately come back into the organization as cost savings and, of course, as goodwill and capital inside the company to allow you to take those next steps and really kind of move further into realms of AI and automation, et cetera. So NeuroFlash as an SI is really the preeminent digital and AI partner for both AWS and Salesforce. Myself, I'm just one small piece of that puzzle. And of course, the Service Cloud Voice product is one small piece of our business units as well. We have core practices around transformation in the contact center, sales cloud, quote to cash, field service, portals, AKA Experience Cloud, and more. But what we really focus on is business results. And so we aligned with 3M on where they were trying to go. Not just the technology they wanted to turn on, but in fact the results they were trying to get. And then we aligned the technology and the project to map to those goals and to progress them forward on their actual business metrics. And so that's how we start all conversations with our customer. It's not about the technology, it's about your business. Tell me where you are and where you want to go, and we can help you find the technologies that then make that happen and map out the path to make it real, just like we did at 3M. So Jason, you want to talk about the results you're seeing now?
This is, the standard slide, right? But, in every one of these, we saw this. So if you talk about speed, the implementation was done in a quarter of the time-ish to what we had seen with this would be the second telephony. We first started this, go back 3-4 years. You had people on different telephony systems all over the place, so we did do an initial implementation that pulled at least together. That was kind of phase one. This was done in a quarter of the time, so no doubt fast. We definitely see the speed. There's roughly 1 million cases that we hope to. I'd love to cut them in half. Again, this was just rolled out, so we're starting to pile up the metrics, but it's no doubt going faster. Supervisors are seeing efficiency, and the agents have more, and they're connected with the case, so they can talk about it. So absolutely. How did this happen? So if you think about my team really was on the business side, they were in essence, kind of the requirements, design requirements, UAT, that's the piece that we held. Patrick and team at NeuroFlash, they were the SI partner, they did the lift, they coded it on AWS. And then we also had, across the couple thousand agents, we have a net of kind of super users that also assisted. And that was the team. It wasn't So if you also talk about speed without an army really to pull it off. I sat through, you can see on the slide there's 6 deployments. I had the pleasure of sitting through one of them. And those are, for those of you, how many have been through a telephony cutover? All right, so you guys know what I'm talking about. It was intense, and as you could see, the kind of the tier, I was maybe qualified for kind of the tier 1-ish. Here's a list of 100 numbers, kid, go see if they still work, and I'm just dialing numbers. The 3M team was probably the level 2, and then you had the NeuroFlash agents on as level 3, and it was pretty slick. And as they went out, and each one as we moved across the globe, the kind of the hypercare, the team knew what was going to happen. You saw within the week everything was smooth, and then people needed help for the following month-ish, but that's kind of the way it went.
With 3M, every year they have about 4 million cases that come through on Service Cloud. And the opportunity here, as Jason mentioned, is to maybe cut out 1 million cases just through the migration to Service Cloud Voice. And the amazing thing is, it hasn't been hit on, but it's been a global deployment, very global, just being how global 3M is. And I think Amazon covered every region that they needed to deploy in from a Connect standpoint. And the partnership between AWS and Salesforce, I think, shone through and through, because it was a quick, super seamless, and I'd say just an overall very positive implementation, migration, and they're seeing a ton of benefit just from the single pane of glass from Salesforce and Amazon right now for their CSRs. So it's been really neat to see it all come together, but I think there's just a huge benefit with the deployment as well.
And that time to value, I think, is probably understated when people think about the projects. Everybody wants to get to the end state, that they're looking for. And as I said, we really align with our customers on where they're trying to get from a business perspective. But the time it takes to get you there, and the sort of barrier to entry, is a huge part of the eventual success metric that comes out at the other side. Your investment in terms of your time and your people's time, as well as the blood, sweat, and tears that go through those kind of projects, really then account for how successful things are seen at the end. And so that path to get to the end, I think, is as important as kind of moving you through the pipeline on that. And we're really proud about the partnership that we had across both vendors, as well as with the customer in this project, to really get this complex rollout, which, as you mentioned, Brian, was global, to really get that through the project timeline very, very quickly for a telephony implementation. And I think that's a big part of the story.
Yeah, and I think it was months, not years. So that's
Yes.
Right. I think that's the biggest thing is, they went global in months, and again, it was super, super successful. I think the next slide speaks to that, kind of what they're seeing today.
So for those that are looking at this, if I were to talk about the AWS piece, probably the biggest thing is I talked to the team that we saw. The tier 1, as you went across the globe, China was not in scope, so that was the only piece that maybe aided, that might have slowed it down a little bit. But the tier providers in each of the geographies were very solid. So, from a stability, uptime, basically there was, perhaps as you're looking at this, there was a smaller set than some of the other alternatives, but the ones that were there were backed as expected. So. So if you look at each of these different personas, so the global CRM analyst, so that would be somebody like an admin that would be on my group. And again, my group is center of the company, handle all of the CRM users and any of their inquiries and escalations. And there's a group that's got telephony. And so these guys now have a declarative interface that they can go in and make changes. So I'm able to bring a non-core programmer who leans technical. And I know there's a bunch of 3M IT folks in here, so if they're in the room, I don't want IT to know about, because they're good and they could maybe be techie, but they're not quite there yet. So these guys can, there's a couple of them that are well positioned to slide right in, and they can leverage that interface. Also, easier escalation. Before it was always submit a ticket and wait, and now there's a much quicker escalation path. The supervisors, they are seeing, kind of the omni experience, where probably the biggest thing from my perspective as you talk to them, they were struggling to standardize operations across either within an area or for sure from area to area. They do things differently in every part of the world. This is enabling them to force it. And the second piece is the model was kind of a central queue, come get it, come pull from the queue, where now it's push, right? So it's much more, harder to hide perhaps. There's a workload distribution that's more auto. The super users are supposed to fix stuff. And again, they now have the ability to do that in more real time than they did, and they can do it, there's more they can do. So that when I talk to them, that's what they tell me. And then the agents now have a call transcription automatically populated. You just show up and all of a sudden, okay, here's what happened on the call. They love it. They have voice in there now, and so they can go back and do some diagnostics. It's tied to the case. So now we're actually able to, to start understanding what's happening. I likely covered everything on this slide. But we are, so far so good. So just from a timing standpoint, this was, again, we started this, so Brian and I were just talking about this. So this was actually, kind of deal done, where we acquired it in April, a year prior in 22, testing October, we rolled out in January, so it was quick. And then we did these 6 deployments, every 6 weeks or so. As we marched into the year, we were done by September, October timeframe. All right, KPIs. These are kind of your standard call center. These are a few of the things that you would see in a call center. These our guys look at these. I think these are pretty weak. Now they're important, but I'd like we now have the ability to take these to another level. So I'm interested. I mentioned before, there's a million cases. How can we cut them in half? Can we deflect them? I don't think we're. So maybe this way to think about it. We just went through moving everybody over, and it works, and the numbers work, and you can talk, and right. So now it's like, what do you got? You're sitting in a new car. I don't know how to work the buttons, right? I mean, so now the teams are starting to look into what can I get out of the box, and we're starting to see a bunch of agent assist. We're looking at call time. We're looking at number of cases. We're looking at some of the, if you kind of go through this, from a deflection, containment, and then we're looking at areas that now can be, basically, task automation. We're starting to line up that pipeline where we didn't really have visibility to it before. And so that's where we're going, and we are seeing, the productivity. It's probably too early to totally spike the ball, but the metrics are there. All right, so that's what we did. Maybe I'll pause. Any questions on kind of what we did in the process before what's next? Yeah.